Before you were diagnosed with breast cancer, would you say that you were healthy in the way you ate and taking care of yourself? Or was it like, yeah, sort of?
So that's a trick question because in my head, because I weighed 110 pounds, I was thin because I was a competitive athlete. In my head, I thought that that meant that I was healthy. So the answer to that is me, Holly Bertone in 2010, I thought I was healthy. I come to realize that just because you're thin and just because you're athletic doesn't mean you're healthy. So I was in a very high stress, demanding, high powered position at the FBI. My diet was, oh gee, where do I start? 6 cans of Coca-Cola a day,
God.
pizza, bagels, pasta, chicken tenders, French fries, ice cream. I'd eat a family-sized bag of M&Ms for lunch, and peanut, because of the protein.
Holly Bertone is a former FBI Chief of Staff for Counterintelligence turned certified holistic health coach. She helps midlife women find the clues to improve their health so their high achievement lifestyle no longer clashes with unwanted weight gain, lack of energy, and restless nights. She learned this the hard way after being diagnosed with breast cancer and an autoimmune disease, that there's more to life than burning the candle at both ends. She took back control of what's important in life, and she's here to help you do the same. Holly is a keynote speaker, #1 best-selling author, and host of Your Midlife Comeback Story podcast. Okay, so Holly, I know the first thing on everyone's mind is, how did you go from being the chief of staff for counterintelligence at the FBI to becoming a certified holistic health coach?
Oh my goodness, that is such a great question to start off with. And I know it does seem like a stretch, but if you can indulge me for about 30 seconds, I want to take you back to when I was about 10 years old, because it's all going to make sense. I promise it's all going to make sense. So when I was a little girl, I loved doing puzzles. I mean, I still do. I have one downstairs out on the table, but I got bored with just the 1,000-piece puzzle. Well, we had this huge dining room table at my house. So I would take 3 different 1,000-piece puzzles, dump them out on the table, mix them up, and put them back together. And yes, I know, just nerd alert. So my dream, fast forward, my dream in high school was to work for the FBI. And this was even before Silence of the Lambs came out. And I mean, I was just, small town girl from Pennsylvania, who am I and how on earth would I get there? And before the internet, I mean, where would you even start? So I kind of just gave up on the dream. Fast forward, I ended up working for Booz Allen Hamilton, which is a consulting company down in Alexandria, Virginia. 9/11 happened. I got my security clearance. And the second I got my security clearance, one of my former managers was working down in Quantico. And he called me up and he's like, "Hey, Holly, do you want to come down here and work for me and work for the FBI?" And I was like, yes, please. So it was a childhood dream that just manifested years later. And what I did, and if you remember, 9/11 happened at the beginning of the century, and sounds so weird to say. And yeah, like we're old or something. And so I did a lot of project management. And if you remember, none of the agencies talk to each other. So when all the reports came out from Congress, the 9/11 Commission report and the WMD Commission report, the FBI had mandates to put certain programs together and to help fix all the pieces that didn't talk to each other. So I ended up working for 4 different programs to help them create those synergies and putting the pieces together, from the project management perspective. And I guess they liked the work that I did so well that they actually asked me to come on board as an official GS-15 government employee, chief of staff for the Counterintelligence Program Management Office, which was just a huge honor and so much fun. So I got to work with a lot of data. I got to look at trends and look at bad guys and threats and what had happened in the past, and look at it from that kind of predictive perspective in terms of, how can we predict those future threats? So fast
Awesome.
forward, yeah, right. And we could get into my story, but fast forward in 2000, and I guess it was around 2018, 2019 or so, when I became a certified holistic health coach. And that's when I really dove into not just holistic health for myself, but also for my clients, and doing the exact same thing, taking all the pieces, dumping them out, figuring out which goes together and putting that puzzle together. Same thing that I did at the FBI, also in terms of looking, like going back, looking at root causes, looking at what got us here, right? Not from a place of blame or shame, but just from that analytical curiosity detective hat. And then how can we take what the information that we have and really help to, create this lifestyle so that when those obstacles happen, we can actually predict those threats. So I'm literally doing the exact same thing as a certified holistic health coach as I did at the FBI, as I did when I was 10 years old. It's awesome.
Well, I love that too, because you make a really good point, and you're actually the first health coach that I've heard say this, is looking at all aspects, the full spectrum of aspects in someone's life to figure out what's going wrong, what's not working for them, and what we need to change. Because what I have found is a lot of health coaches just focus on diet and exercise, right?
Yes.
And those are the two main things. And while they're important, I've never heard a health coach, not to say that there aren't any that do it, but you're the first one that I've heard that says you're looking at the entire background. So I think that's brilliant, and that's really,
Oh,
really
thank you.
smart.
Thank you. I
And
appreciate that. And we've got this industry, the diet industry. I mean, what is it? I've seen 92% or 95%, pick one, they're both bad, has a huge failure rate. And
yeah.
I really feel like the industry is set up to fail, is set up for us to fail. And and that's why I like to come in. I was like, okay, why isn't this working? Why does traditional, I mean, diet and exercise and the nutrition and all of these lifestyle components, they're important. And even when you do them, why aren't they working?
Right. Now, I know in your story that you went through a challenging time while you were working at the FBI. And can you tell us that story? And at the same time, can you share with us, is that what also helped you change your own life when it came to health?
Yes and yes. So the year was 2010, and I was diagnosed with breast cancer on my 39th birthday. So I'm actually coming up on 14 years of my cancer survivorversary. So I went through surgery, chemo, radiation because I was 39, because I didn't know anything other than, cancer is supposed to be for grandmothers and it's really scary. And I didn't want to die. Right. Like those are the only things. Like back then, I didn't know anything. So I went in with so much fear and took a pretty aggressive approach with treatment. And then fast forward, after treatment ended, my health just kept getting worse and worse. I didn't get better. Now, it's important to know before cancer, I was a competitive mountain bike racer. I literally raced mountain bikes. I would stand on a podium and get a medal around my neck, right? Like I was a competitive athlete. I raced in Xterra triathlons. I rock climbed. I took boxing lessons. I mean, you know, the fact that I'm not getting healthy, I knew that there was something wrong. And I ended up being diagnosed with Hashimoto's thyroiditis, which is a autoimmune condition. And then that stabilized for a little bit. And the doctor, I remember going into the doctor's appointment and I'm thinking, after everything that I've been through, just give me some pills and I'm going to be better. Well, anyone
Mhm.
with an autoimmune condition knows you take those pills, you're not better, right? Like autoimmune condition has a lot of root cause issues. It's not just about, managing the symptoms with a pill. So again, not knowing anything, not changing anything. And I kept going down this path and my health just kept getting worse and worse. And the biggest thing was the chronic fatigue. And it was debilitating chronic fatigue. So much that in 2017, I actually had to resign from my dream job at the FBI. I mean, I couldn't even get out of bed, and it was just a bad situation. I was married at the time. I had a young stepson, and I mean, I couldn't take care of myself. I couldn't function at work. I couldn't take care of my family, and that was pretty much rock bottom.
Oh my goodness. And at the time, well, let me ask you before that time, like before you were diagnosed with breast cancer, would you say that you were healthy in the way you ate and taking care of yourself? Or was it like, yeah, sort of?
So that's a trick question because in my head, because I weighed 110 pounds, I was thin because I was a competitive athlete. In my head, I thought that that meant that I was healthy. So the answer to that is me, Holly Bertone in 2010. I thought I was healthy. I come to realize that just because you're thin and just because you're athletic doesn't mean you're healthy. So I was in a very high stress, demanding, high powered position at the FBI. My diet was, oh, gee, where do I start? 6 cans of Coca Cola a day,
God.
pizza, bagels, pasta, chicken tenders, French fries, ice cream. I'd eat a family size bag of M&Ms for lunch and peanut, because of the protein.
Oh yeah, because that makes it healthy. That's what I
Right?
always tell myself when I eat peanut M&Ms. Oh, it has protein.
I would totally
Did
guess
you
what I
ever
didn't.
eat vegetables during that time? Because I haven't heard one vegetable or salad or
No, I would say probably a solid 95% of my diet was ultra processed food.
and you're just I'm assuming you're just one of those people that doesn't gain weight,
Well,
and
I was
also because
also,
you
yeah, I mean, I was under 40 and I was literally training as a competitive athlete. So I had a very,
now did you
yeah,
because not gonna lie, I tend to do this. When I work out really hard, I'm like, "Oh, I could eat a bigger meal." Were you
exactly.
doing that
Yeah.
too? Because you
Oh, yeah.
were training so
Yeah. I mean,
intensely?
I would work out an hour or two in the morning before work and then after work. And, I'd work out another hour after work. I mean, it was just, yeah, the training was pretty intense.
Okay, so let's come back to when you resigned
So
from
that
the
was a trick question. The answer was yes and no.
right. No, I totally get it. Now, when coming back to when you resigned from the FBI, I'm sure you were feeling crappy both mentally and physically. And so obviously you didn't want to stay in that place. So how did you start making some changes in your life and how did you figure out what you needed to change?
Yeah, so I was in a victim mentality because I literally thought because of all of the health stuff that I had been through that I just like this was just how it was supposed to be. So my woe is me, I don't want to say was necessarily justified. It's just I didn't know anything about functional medicine. I didn't know anything about like I kept going to the doctors and I'm like, I'm not getting better. And they just shrugged their shoulders. So I was like, okay, well, I'm just destined to be like this. So it was a victim mentality from a place of I just didn't know any better, right? But what had happened was I don't know, it wasn't like it was some big epiphany. Just one day I woke up and I'm like, I'm not okay. I'm not okay living the rest of my life like this. And I didn't know where to start. I didn't know what to even look for. I didn't know anything about like functional medicine or, holistic health or anything like that, root cause healing. I just was like, I want to figure out a way. I want to get 10% better, maybe 15, right? Like I just wanted to be enough that I could, lay down during the day and then function at night for my family. Like that was all I wanted.
Mhm.
And so I started down the path of, like I said, becoming a health coach, but more for my own healing, my own edification. And, and that certainly started to move the needle. But I found that it was a lot more than, like you said, that traditional, the nutrition and the exercise and the lifestyle factors and things like that. I realized that there was a huge emotional component attached to healing. And also, over the years, I've learned that it's not just from a chronic illness perspective, it's from a weight perspective, it's from a mental health perspective. Like that emotional component, going back down and looking at that root cause from that emotional component, like that sets us up for everything that we're dealing with. And again, it's one piece of the puzzle. I'm a holistic health coach. I don't look at, individual slices as the end all be all. It is the whole thing. But there is such a huge component to releasing the past and releasing all of those negative stories and patterns and beliefs and traumas and all of the stuff that got us here. And that's really what I started to focus on. And I started to see huge changes in my health. I started to see huge changes in my clients. And, now working with women in midlife, really seeing those changes as well. And yeah, I mean, that's really where I started leaning into as a holistic coach, is that whole mindset piece of it, is that we can rewire our brain. Our cells overturn all of the time. So we can create a new beginning in ourselves from a mindset, from a mental perspective, from an energetic perspective, from an identity perspective. And that's where we live out of. And when we can live out of that new place, oh my goodness, you're unstoppable. And that's how I got out of the hole, and, literally went from, okay health to great health to vibrant health.
Yeah. So, Holly, when you talk about releasing the mental aspect and the emotions that come with that, how were you able to access that? Because I know that's not easy for everyone to access on their own. I mean, I know some people can, and some people use therapists or psychologists or psychiatrists to do that. How were you able to access that and figure out what was truly holding you back?
Yeah, that's such a great question, Suzanne. And, and again, this is before I even knew who, anyone in the industry was. Like you could say any of the big names, right? I was just figuring this out myself. And it was just a lot of trial and error. It was using all of those skills, again, from, being a kid working on the puzzle to the FBI, and just really trying to find those clues. And I actually started, you're going to laugh at this, but it's going to make sense. I actually started by listening to songs, because I kept saying, like, I felt stuck. Like, I don't know how to explain it. And you can't go to a doctor and say, I just feel stuck. And they're like, are you constipated? I'm like, no, not that. I just feel stuck. Like my body feels stuck. Right
Right.
now, like you and I know what that means. Right. But yeah. So, and again, back then I didn't have that knowledge. So I was like, well, I feel like I want to make space in my body. Right. So that's what I was like, okay, I need to figure out how to make space in my body. Like this is literally my mindset. So I was like, well, I would go outside. I was like, okay, meditation. Well, meditation didn't work. I would like try to take a bath, and I would scream at the water to fill up the tub. Yeah, because I was like, come on, fill up, fill up, fill up. Yeah, because I was like so impatient. And then I'd sit down. I'm like, okay, meditate, go. And I'd look at my watch. I was like, okay, meditate, go. I'd look at my watch. Okay, that was not working. Now I meditate for, 2 hours at a time. But back then I couldn't do it. So I would listen to a song, and I would find the pause in between the notes. Like Mick Jagger says, it's about the roll, it's not about the rock. Like music's about the roll, it's not about the rock. And so I would listen to my favorite songs, and I would find that just micro moment in between the notes. And that was what I focused on. And that was what I called the quiet, that pause. And once I started training my brain how to just really be present to that pause, it went from a micro moment, a microsecond, to a few seconds, to a minute, to a few minutes, to sitting outside and just looking at nature for 20 minutes and realizing, my mind just kind of went all over the place, but not in a bad way, just in a very flowing in a good way, in a present way. And I was like, ah. And that was one of the big pieces that also started to open things up, is having that space.
First of all, I'm having this deja vu moment. This is so crazy because just this morning, I always listen to the radio when I'm getting ready. And I was listening to this talk show, and they were talking about music and the notes, and they talked about exactly what you just said, the
No
pause
way.
in the notes. And I've never heard anyone say that like this morning. And then you just repeated exactly what they said. And they were saying that music is not about the note, it's about the pause between the notes. And I was like, what? And the fact that
That's
you just
crazy.
said it, I'm like, this is crazy. Like, I had no idea, obviously, you were going to say that. I'm like, gosh, this is serendipitous. But I love that you shared that you couldn't do meditation in the beginning, because I was the same way. Is
Yeah.
I couldn't do it. I was like, I can't. And this is especially when I lived in New York, and I was like going 90 miles a minute, and I was like, I can't do meditation. But I love that you shared how you did it in steps, and that everyone needs to hear that. For any of
Yeah.
you that are saying, I can't do meditation, don't try. If you think it's hard to do 30 minutes, don't start with 30 minutes. Do like
Yeah.
Holly did and start with that just minute. That's, seconds. And then just gradually increase it. Because now you said you're up to 2 hours. I don't do 2 hours. The max I can do is 30. But you do 2 hours? That's amazing.
So I'm now divorced and an empty nester, so it's just me and my pug. So I have a little extra time than the average person. I do admit that. But yeah, so weekend mornings, I'll spend an hour more in the morning before I even get out of bed meditating. And then Saturday, I try to do 30 minutes to an hour in the middle of the day. And then Sunday, I try to do 2 extra hours.
Wow. And do you feel like that just calms you or grounds you, or what does it do for you? Because I know for everybody it's different.
Yeah, I mean, it does a lot of things. It definitely there's some grounding. I just feel like I'm more like whole and complete. And I feel like I'm ready to take on the day. Like when I start my day with meditation, so I start with silence and a prayer, and then I go right into meditation. And it just feels like it just sets me up for the day. I mean, it's just such a great practice. And I really feel like it does create that space. And, I like to say the magic happens in the space, and that's really where it does.
Right, right. Are you like me? Because this is my practice. Is um I don't start my morning off with looking at my phone. I do not turn on my phone. And the first thing that I do is the meditation and my exercises, because, like you said, I feel like it starts my day off right. It grounds me, and then it prepares me for whatever happens after that. And I feel like I can handle anything. And I do notice, because I'm human, I don't start it every single morning. Like this morning, I didn't start it off that way, but I do notice a difference. I always feel like I'm a little untethered when I don't start off my day with that.
Yeah.
And I don't feel as grounded. Is that the same for you?
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, the first probably 5 minutes or so is just kind of quiet and prayer. All of my meditations are on my phone. So I do reach for my phone, but it's only to turn on, and I keep it on my file so I don't even have to turn on the Wi Fi. So I am on my phone, but it's just to turn it on and then put it over to the side. But I have all different lengths that I listen to, and all different, people and whatever. So, I mean, and I have the short one. I've got the 5 minute one because I was like, if it's one of those days where I ended up oversleeping or something's going on or whatever, and I really do need to get up, I was like, at least I've got a 5 minute shorter meditation that I can, listen to it to at least get grounded for a couple minutes before I roll.
Right, right. Now, that was your comeback story, and I think you have an amazing comeback story because, number one, you came back from cancer, and then you just started a whole new career and something that you're really passionate about. So, But how would a woman in midlife know that she needs a comeback story?
Oh my goodness, that's such a good question. I really feel like when we get to this age, we have all of the demands. And, and some are some of the demands, some are all of the demands, but it's between career, spouse, kids, aging parents, volunteer stuff, community stuff. Like it's everything that said we would, make us happy, right? We have, or we have most of it. And it's just draining us, right? So, like when we were in our 20s and 30s, like we're like, okay, I've checked all the boxes. Why am I not happy? Like, why is all of this draining? And I feel like I've always I have a quarter here. So it's almost like a coin, right? Like you've got this is your life, and this side of the coin is everything that drains you. But what if you had all of the same life? It's just now everything gave you energy. And that's how I like to view the comeback is that it's not always the big, and I know we both have had some big events in our lives. It's not always the big event. It's the day to day. It's just all of the stuff that just keeps piling up. And all of a sudden we're just under this mountain of stress and stuff and life demands, and we just become completely disconnected from ourselves. And that's really why, and especially in our midlife years, I really feel like every single midlife woman needs a comeback.
It's interesting when you were describing how a woman in midlife may be feeling at this point is I got this image that a lot of us in midlife can feel like, well, this is normal for me. Like, working 8 to 10-hour days and, eating food on the run and not making time for ourselves and putting everyone else's needs above our own to the point where we've just become used to, which I think is sad, being in this frenzied state where we feel a little drained. And sometimes we're so far down that rabbit hole that we may not see that we need that quote unquote comeback, right?
You're
Or,
absolutely right. Yeah.
or a readjustment in our life or to change a couple of things in our life. Um, one of the things that I've noticed with women in midlife, and you and I are both in midlife, and we're both coaches. And so I know we both hear this a lot is about the menopause and gaining weight. And, I don't know what happened. All of a sudden, I'm gaining this weight and I'm doing the same exact things the exercise, the eating healthy, and blah, blah, blah. But I'm still gaining weight. So, what can help a woman that's stuck in that phase of the menopause weight gain and she's just like frustrated, like she almost feels like she's surrendering herself to this is just the way it is. Is it just the way it is?
It's not. And we think that way. And all of our friends think that way. Like we all just kind of complain about, all of this stuff. And it's not just the weight gain, it's the distribution. So even if you are one of the lucky ones, your weight stayed the same, it's in different places. Like gravity just kind of takes over and your clothes just don't fit the same anymore. So if I could jump into the Rocky framework, this is really where this comeback shines. And so it's I call it the Rocky inspired framework, ROCKY. R is what I like to call the rear view mirror. And this is really where you release those patterns, those stories from the past. And again, not from a place of blame or shame. This is all about forgiveness and compassion. And we get so tethered to all of these stories that we were the pretty one or the smart one, and now all of our validation is based on how we look or our career or our spouse or our kids or like all of these things. They're like, no, your validation, like that's inside of you, like that's who you are as a person. So it's being able to just break these tethers of all of these stories and the patterns and habits from the past too, and especially when it comes to weight loss. O is what I like to call own your ship with a P, like a boat. This is personal responsibility. And this is, I mean, when I was diagnosed with breast cancer, my doctor just said, she just shrugged her shoulders and she just said, lightning struck. So I didn't realize that I needed to change some things in my, like, nutrition. I was exercising a lot, but nutrition and stress, toxins, like there's a lot of things that we have agency over. And that we, when it comes to the big diseases, cancer, autoimmune heart disease, diabetes, Alzheimer's, dementia, there are so many lifestyle factors that we have agency over with nutrition, movement throughout the day, removing or minimizing the toxins, with your household products, your beauty products, all of these things. We have so much, we can take so much responsibility for our life. And like you said, we kind of just get to the point where we're in our rut, we're just kind of like, oh, I don't know what to do, right? This is what you can do. C is create your future self. And I think this is another area where the just diet industry as a whole has gone wrong, because they focus on weight loss by whatever means possible, or calorie restriction, and they only focus on the one thing, and that is those two, that number between your two big toes, aka the scale, right? And it's so much more than that. And I like to view health from a holistic perspective. And especially at mid-age, right? At midlife, we should not be thinking about what we're doing today. We should be thinking about our future self, what life is going to look like in our 60s, 70s, 80s, even 90s, right? Everyone's like, I hate squats. My knee hurts, my hip hurts, my back hurts. I hate squats, But I was like, guess what? If you are 50 years old and you live to be 85, that's 35 years. We go to the bathroom on average 8 times a day. 8 times a day times 35 years, you're going to be doing 100,000 squats for the rest of your life when you go to the bathroom, whether you like it or not, right? And it's just going to get worse as we get older. You want to be able to like bend down and pick up your grandkids, or, go on vacation, or, be able to take the groceries out of the car. Like, we want to be able to live independently when we get older. So
Yeah.
this is why this is so important. And again, we just put our head in the sand, like, oh, I have this event coming up, and I don't, I want to wear my dress with the sleeveless, and, not have to be embarrassed about my arms. Well, let's start thinking about the big picture. K is keep the vision, not the view. This one's one of my favorites, because this is where things become sustainable and, like I say, an effortless part of your lifestyle, because the obstacles are going to happen every single day, every single day. It's like, oh, you know what? It's a rainy day. I'm running late, fight with my spouse, washing the dishes, and food got on my shirt. Now I have to change my clothes, and, the kids are doing whatever, like all of this stuff. And we can just pretty much guarantee it's going to happen. And then we use that, I don't want to say necessarily as an excuse, but it's like, oh, I'm not feeling like, I just don't want to work out today because it's raining outside. Even if your workout's inside, like, I just don't feel like working out today because it's raining outside. So, or, oh, I messed up and I'm just going to start over on Monday. And then Monday never happens. So this is about planning for those future obstacles to make sure that this does become a part of your lifestyle, and not just something that you hate doing. And then, so R is rear view mirror, O is own your ship with a P, C is create your future self, K is keep the vision, not the view. And then Y is just coming back home to you. Like, this is where the hero's journey is. This is like, you have this inside of you all the time. And when you can show up and you're in that place where you're confident, where you're completely aligned, where you've got purpose in your life, like, you just become unstoppable. I had a client just the other day, and she's like, I was listening to one of our calls back in a couple months ago, and she was like, I'm like a whole different person. She's like, I didn't even know who that was back then, but she goes, I really like who I am now. And I was like, that's what it's all about. The weight loss, everyone's screaming about weight loss, and I get it, because that's what's visible and that's what's screaming the loudest, but it's just one small sliver of the whole package. And that's really what it is just being that vibrant self, and, just living this life unapologetically. So yeah, that's what it's all about.
Oh, I love that you have that process, because I think it's so important that we look at all those different aspects. And it's true. It's like, you know, I think back to times where I have been quote unquote skinny, right? Like weighed 110 pounds, which I don't weigh that anymore. But And how I didn't feel good though mentally. And so people can mistake that for, oh, you look so great, but I don't feel great. I don't feel great inside and I don't feel great mentally. Like I feel better now, I weigh more, but I feel healthier in all aspects of my life. But it took, a lot of work and a lot of acceptance of where I'm at. And I actually, for me, and I know this isn't for everybody, but for me, I stopped weighing myself. I go by how my clothes fit. And I know when I've gained weight because I used to just get so depressed when I'd step on that scale and it had changed and it went up, or being happy because it went down. I didn't like that roller coaster. So for me, I don't weigh myself. I haven't weighed myself in probably 20 years. So and it works for me. And I know that doesn't work for everybody, but I didn't want to live my life anymore by a number on the scale. So
Yeah.
what are your
Yeah.
thoughts on that, Holly?
I mean, I really think that that's an individual decision. And I think, you need to do what's best for you. And I'm saying you, not you necessarily you, but you, everyone listening,
Yeah.
need to do what's best for you. For me, I weigh myself, I don't know, like 2 or 3 times a week, but more just to, stay on track. And I also have one of those scales that tracks a bunch of other metrics also from the weight. So I like to make sure that, just kind of from an overall health perspective that those metrics are tracked. I've got a Fitbit where I track some metrics as well. So I'm not obsessed about it, but I do, again, I'm a data nerd, so I like the data, but I look at it from a data perspective. I don't place my value on whether numbers are up or down or at a certain place. It's just, let me show up in curiosity. Let me put detective hat on. Let me put FBI hat on and go find some clues. Why is this happening? If this is a trend, if it's everything's always going to fluctuate. If you start seeing trends, this is like, okay, let's just put our detective hat on and go find some clues.
See, that's how much I haven't weighed myself. I didn't even know there were other options on the scale that it's showing you. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Um, well, this has been great, Holly. So, how can people find you?
Yeah. So the best way, if you love the Rocky framework, I actually have a free private podcast that you can listen to. It's called Your Comeback Experience. And we go through the Rocky framework in full detail. And you can get that at podcastholly.com. So it's podcastholly.com. And then come say hello on Instagram, just at holly.bertone.
Awesome. So, ladies, if you've been feeling like I need to get out of this rut, I need my own comeback story, this is a great way to start and start today. Don't put it off until next week, next month, because it's going to fade away. And before you know it, then you're not going to do it. So, if you've been feeling motivated by and inspired by Holly and her story and her framework, you got to go see her.